Early in 1964, a new U.S. strategy began to unfold in Vietnam. It was written in the vapor trails that crossed the Pacific sky. Vapor trails that began at air bases in the Pacific, at tactical air command bases in the United States. Vapor trails formed by sleek Air Force jets. Muscle to build up our air strength. The situation made it imperative that we be ready to strike back. This was the United States Air Force, showing the versatility that was to make it such a vital factor in the Vietnam theater. Air-to-air refueling made it possible to deploy aircraft swiftly and efficiently. Soon, F-100 Super Sabres were setting down on the runways at Da Nang and Tan Son Nhut, while two squadrons of twin-jet B-57s went to Bien Hoa. The buildup of U.S. air power was underway. The buildup included the many additional services that must accompany a fighter-bomber force. More troops and cargo carriers. More rescue aircraft. More gear. More maintenance men. More equipment. More munitions. Expanded communications facilities and new air bases. But the jets were not to see action right away. For a time, the situation remained relatively static. Then, the communists blew the lid off. Literally. Bien Hoa. Pleiku. Quy Nhon. Tan Son Nhut. Saigon. These direct attacks against U.S. forces, together with the growing number of atrocities committed by the Viet Cong, caused the U.S. to take a long, hard look at Vietnam. What it saw was ominous. The enemy roamed almost at will in the dense jungles, using tactics learned in almost 20 years of unceasing guerrilla warfare. The same tactics that had cost the French 100,000 casualties and sent them down to final defeat at Dien Bien Phu in 1954. The Viet Cong controlled much of South Vietnamese territory into which they moved in men and supplies, virtually unhampered, along a vast logistic network. The notorious Ho Chi Minh Trail. It was obvious that without massive assistance, South Vietnam would fall, and it would be only a matter of time until all of Southeast Asia would be faced with the prospect of a communist invasion. Only hours after the Pleiku attack, the National Security Council passed a resolution authorizing airstrikes in North Vietnam. Within 2 days, U.S. airmen and pilots of the fledgling South Vietnamese Air Force launched strikes against military targets north of the demilitarized zone. Soon afterward, in a companion action, Air Force jets at Tan Son Nhut, Da Nang, and Bien Hoa were unleashed in South Vietnam. There were now, in fact, 2 air wars underway in embattled Vietnam. North of the 17th parallel, the emphasis was on cutting supply lines. South of the parallel, the action was more varied, but close air support of ground forces received the major effort. Now, the pace of the build-up redoubled. Additional squadrons of aircraft were deployed to Vietnam in a trans-Pacific migration of unprecedented scale. New airfields sprang into being with amazing speed. New launch bases for the ever-growing swarm of military aircraft. New logistics bases for the increasing demands of our ground forces. 69 days after the start of construction, operational aircraft began landing at Cam Ranh Bay. The interim facilities, built on a sandy coastal peninsula, now house a tactical fighter wing, an aerial port, and a vast logistics complex. Phan Rang is the home of another tactical fighter wing. These are but a few of the many primary, secondary, and P-patch air facilities hustled into existence in response to the need for more air power. Built by methods unique to our military engineers, much of this construction will be of permanent use to the Vietnamese people. Administration of the rapidly growing aerial armada was already well established. Pacific Air Forces, the air element of the Unified Pacific Command, is responsible for directing and supporting the bulk of Air Force activities in the Pacific. The hub of this vast command is headquartered at Hickam Air Force Base, Hawaii, linked to the Vietnam Theater of Operations by an ultra-modern communication system, keeping the PACAF commander abreast of happenings throughout the Pacific. This Air Force-operated communications network not only ties PACAF headquarters to its Pacific air bases and the United States mainland, but also allows for direct contact between this control center at Hickam and strike aircraft. Thus, a strike force headed for a North Vietnamese target is enmeshed in a communications web, the heart of which is the on-scene command in South Vietnam, located at Tan Son Nhut Air Base, headquarters of the U.S. 7th Air Force. Here, the result of the air power buildup is very much in evidence.
Good morning, sir. On 27 February...
While overall direction of Air Force operations in the Pacific is normally handled by PACAF headquarters, the 7th Air Force commander and his staff are responsible for the tactical forces employed in the Vietnam combat theater.
U.S. Marine Corps.
Because Tan Son Nhut is frequently within earshot of the falling bombs, the cold facts of the regular briefings take on an added significance.
Was a ground report. In Tally-Ho, 101 sorties were flown. The 53 add-ons were 32 F-105s, 4 F-4Cs, and 17 U.S. Navy aircraft from out-country resources.
The figures are constantly changing. At this moment, they are about to be updated.
Dave, I've got our final IP at 12 o'clock, 5 miles.
The combined U.S. and Vietnamese Air Force's Tactical Air Control Center at Tan Son Nhut Airfield provides the 7th Air Force commander with a system for centralized control of his air resources, geared for quick response to all requirements. Detailed control is delegated to the direct air support centers which direct all air activity in their respective areas.
Tally-Ho, I've got the target at 1 o'clock. Roger.
Control of air activity over the extremely fluid battlefronts in Vietnam is given added flexibility by the airborne battlefield command control centers now being used. The heart of the system is a boxcar-sized package of communications and observation gear, which fits readily into a C-130 aircraft for airborne operations, or can be flown into a forward area and set up on the ground in 3 hours or less. The ABCCC is a versatile performer. Among its capabilities are the direction of joint air-ground operations, control of direct air support, the provision of airborne communications during special strikes, and command of air rescue activities. It can also serve as an alternate command post when fixed command facilities are under attack.